Dear Aaron Coxlove, dear Crutcher 70, dear ManyTyBy, dear Smart Vital, dear Devil Senges, dear Mature Muscles for You, dear Joschi below. I want you to know that I've been following you. I watched all your videos, every last one of them. I thought that if I watched you long enough, I would start to know you better. Eventually, I decided that I wanted to see if I could find you. That is when I stood up from behind my computer screen and entered into the city. I decided to follow in your footsteps, using your memories as guides. I tried to imagine how you would experience the city by looking at it through your eyes. Why? Because you told me where to go. You gave me this information. How? Because you told me how to go. You gave me this information. You see, we live in interesting times where information and cities are woven together in very complex ways. In these times, thoughts and memories become images, and images make maps of worlds. This creates a reality that I follow. The multiplicity of possibilities of looking at an image means that it can be interpreted in other ways than originally intended. History, even a personal one, becomes a type of fiction. Movement through the city is also a process of creating a fiction, writing sentences, assembling narratives. So I've collected you all together, and so we begin.
Wenn Mutti früh zur Arbeit geht, dann bleibe ich zu Haus. Ich binde eine Schürze und feg die Stuben aus. Das Essen kochen kann ich nicht, dazu bin ich zu klein. Doch Staub hab ich schon oft gewischt, wie würd sich Mutti freuen. Ich habe auch ein Puppenkind, das ist so lieb und fein. Für dieses kann ich ganz allein die richtige Mutti sein.
Dear Aaron Coxlove, aka Painter Boy, the first time I saw you, you were at work. It was one Wednesday morning, March 2010. You painted a room of an apartment building undergoing renovation in Wartenburgerstrasse 5. You had placed the camera in another room at the end of a hallway. You were dressed completely in white, a dark handkerchief wrapped around to protect your hair from the falling drops of white paint. You were already painting. Somebody else must have turned the camera on. I could hear the sounds of construction. It was clear that you had company. You painted a ceiling, a simple action really, dipping the roller in, then making long sweeping strokes from the left to the right, repeating the same action until you had reached the opposite wall. At the same time, it was quite mesmerizing, graceful even. The whole process took a little over a minute, more like 1 minute, 48 seconds to be exact. As you walked back towards the camera smiling, brushing a bit of paint off your shoulder, I noticed the beginnings of a goatee. Later, 1 year later, you lay in the back of a 4x4 minivan, driving somewhere out of the city. head propped up using a blue denim jacket, you observed yourself in transition. The screen acting as a mirror of how you come to imagine yourself. A young, ruggedly handsome man in his 20s. You passed the camera over to your friend who pointed it out the window, a passing terrain of rotating windmills. Outside, the sky was gray, the clouds heavy with the promise of rain. It reminded me of another view from a moving car, another road trip you made on a summer afternoon, traveling from your hometown in Poland towards Berlin. The videos of yourself at work, as well as at play, have the feel of a newcomer, of somebody who upon arrival starts building up his own social map of an unfamiliar city, building up his own itineraries and personal histories. Work seems to function for you like this. One day in the summer of silence of a summer morning, you finally completed a large project, a row of villas in the countryside by the lake. You gave a guided tour of a couple of the villas, showing all the rooms. The walls were cream-colored, the ceilings a delicate shade of orange. You caught your reflection in the hallway mirror on the way out and made a gesture to yourself that was both cocky and a bit sweet. I found it quite appealing, that small gesture. It made you seem very sympathetic, and I guess I started to like you more then and decided to follow you. Your colleagues waited outside, impatiently smoking. Why you always insist on filming everybody and everything. Still, I can understand why you might want to do this. As soon as it's time to leave and you all drive back together, back to the city, back to your own homes and spaces, probably never to return. And if you don't possess that moment, it's as if it had never happened. It's an impulse to capture and hold on to something before the amnesia takes over. Even if you never looked at this video again, at least there's evidence that it took place, that you exist. This becomes your time capsule. Dear Joschi, this is my first experience of you. You lie on the floor on a mattress covered in a bright orange sheet. Your face has a blush pallor, not a healthy-looking glow, but more a feverish, mottled look. Your hair is glossy and sculpted stiff. You have your eyes closed. Someone holds a small snake, beige and copper stripes, and dangles it above your head. It's a feminine hand. I can tell by the slender fingers and the way it grasps onto things. She lowers the squirming snake, tickling your nose a bit until the snake takes over and starts to make its way across your face. Then she moves back a bit to watch. You look up, your eyes blank as doorknobs, defiant. Maybe you're not even aware that this moment still exists as a recorded memory. You probably barely remember it happening. It's buried so deep under so many others now, invisible, forgotten. But not for me. If you looked at this now, perhaps you wouldn't even recognize yourself. Do you think you would? Do you remember her? Would you like what you saw? Do you like what you see now? For the most part, I don't. It would be a complete understatement if I said that we had quite different political views and ideas. If we met, we probably wouldn't like each other that much. You're 33 years old, photographer, raver. You make your political views very transparent. Don't tell me when you list your hometown as Reichshauptstadt Berlin that you mean this in any other way than how it should be interpreted. Or when you filmed that burning car in June 2011, calling all leftists anti-fascist and environmentalist dirty people, and they should all go to hell. I refer to you as neo-Nazi boy to my friends. But I want to talk about the trains. 72 videos of trains recorded around different spots in the city as well as outside of Berlin. Videos where you, still as a mouse, wait patiently, sometimes for hours in the middle of winter so you can catch but a few seconds of a passing train. There's something that's so disturbing and sublime about them. They take me places. So I decided to stick with you a bit, to see where you will take me, although I might not want to go there. ID 20901. Title: Streichkonzert am Alexanderplatz. Author: aka Painter Boy. Coordinates: 52.522, 304, 534, 912, 111, 3.414, 09, 206, 390, 3809. URL: www.youtube.com/watch?pm_q0_gdata_player. Dear Painter Boy, today I decided to make a trip to the Alexanderplatz, although I was here so many times before. I wanted to stand in the same place that you had when you watched the string trio play Mozart. Actually, it wasn't Mozart. I was trying to place it. You stood so still watching them play while everybody else passed by moving on. But you gave them time. You barely moved. I felt close to you even though I knew that you were no longer there. I was standing where you would have stood if you were there. I was standing where you would have stood if you were listening to music. I was breathing the same air. You were standing on the steps in front of the Galleria Kaufhof. It's the same spot where that punk girl is lying now, passed out. Her leather jacket is black, covered with sharp needle-like spikes. A large spike juts out of her chin as well. Around her pierced navel are tattoos of snakes and skulls. She's lying on her back, passed out in her Doc Marten boots amongst all the scattered flyers and beer bottles. She looks so vulnerable lying there, so peaceful, so oblivious to the people walking around her. Manne eats noodles with his grandson by the Alexa shopping mall on the Alexanderplatz. He's having difficulty eating with the chopsticks. He lets his grandson Oliver poke fun at him. They eat at a beach bar in front of the Alexa shopping mall, a devastating place. He enjoys the briefest of moments together with his grandson. He realizes that he's getting old. He surrounds himself with his family and all the people he loves, together who help create the memories that he so methodically collects and archives. When was it the first time that he looked into his wife's face and realized that they were no longer young, that their lives were slipping away from them? Oliver looks through the camera. There is loud music playing in the background. Grandpa Manne is eating with chopsticks. Part 1, Oliver says. What do you mean, try? I repeatedly tried, Manne answers. Without the fork, Oliver says. Will the peas fall through? Well, one pea I will get for sure. Come back in a half an hour, Manne answers. Oliver turns the camera on himself. Watch the pro, Oliver says. Well, it's easy with the noodles. Well, I guess it works. Yeah, right, Manne answers.
Sonne! 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 Wieder kommt die Sonne!
Hat der Polster verloren?
Das ist wo, wer? Welcher Fleisch? Sonne! Sonne! Stern! Stern!
Christian, a beautifully awesome man, always works towards perfection. He's a man of few words, but when he does speak, he just wants to talk about how big and hard he is. It's exhausting to constantly have to shave his body. His skin becomes quite irritated. Sometimes when nobody else is around, he lifts his shirt up, grabs one of his breasts, and then savagely punches it. When he's super excited, he traces a finger along one of his protruding veins and then makes a slow circle around his nipple without ever touching it. Then he puffs out his glorious pectoral muscles until they swell out into voluminous balloons. He gets so immersed in what he's doing, he doesn't even hear the telephone ringing. One day, he might try just wearing a Speedo and black cycle boots. Christian is muscle power personified. He's a raging werewolf, a big, sexy man that loves to be watched. He is a hot, hairy wolfman. He's hardworking and determined, despite his diabetes. However, he doesn't really know how to pose well. He's a masterful, masculine, muscular work of art, bringing so much joy and excitement into people's lives. He has incredibly big breasts, big and hard as coconuts. If he wanted to, he could break your fucking nuts. Christian often puts a camera on the shelf in the back room of a bodybuilding shop on Karl Marx Allee where he works. He tries to make a quick video before a client comes in. He's a 47-year-old man who's trying his best in the gym, but can't compare with such huge guys. He's sexy and down to earth, likes to dominate with his rock-hard muscles. If anyone came to visit him in Berlin, he would wear his guest down and dominate him in a long, sweaty pro-style wrestling match, or even a big bear hug if somebody walked into his shop. Manny lies in bed at home and observes his ulcered leg. Today is the 26th of June. I was released from the hospital on the 24th, and the doctor says it's all very good, almost closed. I cannot see anything positive about this, but they are experts, and I hope they're right. Today they pulled off the bandage with pincers, or at least part of it. The doctor eventually stopped as to not to torture me anymore. The doctor and nurse say that some people have their whole leg open all the way from the knee down, and they would not complain as much as I do. But it hurts pretty bad, as if somebody poked my leg with a knife and then twisted it around in there. The traces of the bandages are still visible. There's a scar on the club foot I had when I was 12. 52 years later, one can clearly see those traces. Earlier, there were many, many more red dots, but they faded. Here it's all red and super sensitive when I press it. It hurts like hell. On the 3rd of July, I'm supposed to go back to the hospital. The doctor thinks by then the wound will be closed. Well, her word in God's ear, until then. Manne stands in a darkened hallway listening to the sounds of banging coming from the kitchen. It's just before sunset. He decides to enter. Traute, taking a walnut out of a yellow bucket, places each under a tea cloth and opens up the shell using a hammer. She's dressed in black, reading glasses perched on the edge of her nose. She's a reserved and silent little woman in her 70s who speaks little but always seems to mean more than she says. Always scrutinizing, always present, letting him take the stage, letting him run amok with his perpetual boyishness. She still has Oliver Geo pattern miniskirts from the 60s, which she occasionally takes out and wears at parties. Manne approaches her. Who is this angel standing there? What are you doing there? He asks. I'm playing, Traute answers. What's under the cloth? He asks. An iron, she answers. A what? He asks. An iron, yes, she answers. What are you doing there with the ironing board, and what are you going to do with the nuts? He asks. I'm secretly going to eat them all, she answers. Are you going to make a nut cake? He asks. Perhaps, she answers. For Gisela and Adam, and for others too? For Oliver? He asks. She doesn't answer or look up at him. A pause. Isn't that a bit boring? He asks. No, work is never boring, she answers. Okay, well, have great success with that then, he says. Thank you, she answers.
Fahrzeugnummer von der Feststellung über Ausfahren von Alexanderplatz bei der Straße Hauptbahnhof zur Loschager nach und Feststellung. Von der Feststellung zu Kabine.
Dear Joschi, I'm at Ostkreuz station, one of the places where you like to watch the trains. When I arrived, I walked around the station and filmed the trains a bit, but I was actually more interested in the cops. Today it's Sunday. The police are out in full force and the street is lined with police vans. The police seem to be in good spirits, even a bit bored. They're eating cake and ice cream. In the park nearby, all the punks and anti-fascists are sitting and drinking bottles of Sternberg beer. There's kind of a parallel picnic going on. I take a seat in a nearby cafe to eat a salad and watch the police better. One of them was actually quite good looking. Dark hair, tall, slim, eyes that crinkle up when he smiles. He's number 233. He wears a bulletproof vest and has an earpiece. Sometimes he says a few words into the microphone, and when he does, I can hear his voice coming out of the police van. I think they know I'm watching them. I finished my salad and walked towards the park. Now the cops aren't eating cake or ice cream anymore. The mood has shifted. In fact, the cops are all around me. He's standing right next to me, number 233. He doesn't have a wedding ring on. I wonder if that means he's single, or if he leaves at home in case of a riot. I try to look at him in the eyes, but he doesn't seem to notice me. His fingernails are neatly clipped. He doesn't bite them like I do. He tugs at his pants. Where did he get that spot of blue paint on them? Now he's no longer smiling, and his left hand is clenched. All the police are now checking everybody's bags in the park, or anybody that looks remotely leftist. A guy with a red mohawk, somebody wearing sunglasses, 2 girls in black hoodies. They go through the bags and check for projectiles, weapons, pulling out black t-shirts and checking out each logo. Each person pretends the cop doesn't exist and continues to joke with his friends. Suddenly, somebody parks a van in front of Ostkreuz station and puts on some loud punk music. A woman using a megaphone asks everybody to join her. Out fly the black t-shirts, nylon bomber jackets, and sunglasses. Everybody assumes formation around the van. Then I see number 233 with his earpiece. He's the team leader. He's in front of his squadron, his eyes focused straight ahead with a serious look on his face. He runs right by me, and then he's gone. Okay, now I'm in the demonstration. We head into the neighboring district of Lichtenberg to make a tour of all the Nazis living there, the store owners, people living in apartments, a school teacher. I walk with all the others listening to all the slogans. Nazis raus. All the anti-Deutsch are waving Israeli flags. Now the cops are behind me. Suddenly I find myself on the sidewalk walking right beside a large column of police in full riot gear. Then he's there, number 233. Now he notices me. He comes up to me and says, "Why are you so interested in the police?" Dear Manne, today I decided to try and find the apartment building where you live. It's a place where so many things happened. Birthday celebrations, holidays, dinners, everyday moments around the home, watching the fuck parade from the balcony, the fireworks on New Year's Eve as well. I watched your videos so much that I started to turn them into scripts, using them to perform all the different dialogues between yourself and various people in your life. Your walk with Hannah, talking to Traute in the kitchen, dinner table conversations with your family, all those times with Janis, Stanley, and Stuart in the skate park. I try to understand the importance and meaning of these everyday moments, moments that could have just as easily go by unnoticed. I performed them so much that everybody started to become characters that I created. I came here today because I was looking for evidence that you do exist. That's why I sit now at a cafe across the street looking up at your balcony, knowing that you could, at any moment, appear, and I would really see you. This morning when I first arrived, I walked up to look over the list of names by the doorbell and saw your name on the door. It's exactly where you marked it. It's a bit startling to find your name on the door. I didn't expect to find it that quickly. Your name is typed out in small, crisp letters. It looks like it's been there for a long time. These small, crisp letters, they have a feeling of permanence. You live here. You have lived here. You will live here until... Actually, that's another reason I'm here. The last video you posted was on January 1st, 2010. You pointed the camera at the computer monitor showing a row of photo albums, and then went to the balcony to film the fireworks. It was a bit dark. I couldn't see anything. I just heard the loud explosions. You stood there for a bit and then returned to your computer, saying that in a few days you would get a bigger hard drive. Then that was it. I never saw you again. After 4 years and 515 videos later, you, a 74-year-old pensioner that grew up in the GDR, decided to stop. Can I just say that from everybody, you're my favorite? I look up at the balcony. The geraniums are in full bloom. This means that Traute is still there. She always has such nice flowers on the balcony. Then suddenly I see her. She's walking down the street. She looks much tinier than I thought she would. She always has such a quiet strength around her, a kind of stoic determination. I watch her walk along the sidewalk, past the trattoria towards the door of the apartment building. A neighbor holds the door open for her. She smiles and talks with him for a moment, standing by the open doorway, before finally disappearing inside. Dear Manne, today I made a trip up to Weissensee to try and find the cemetery where your father is buried. He was an anti-fascist freedom fighter. To prepare, I spent the entire day before yesterday watching every video that you made when you made a visit to your father on his 101st birthday, 14th of July, 2009. I found a nice spot in the library by Hallisches Tor where I carefully scrutinized each video, repeating segments, replaying them over and over again until I had memorized every gesture, every comment, every feature. These are the experiences that I carried with me on the journey towards the cemetery. I started off cycling in the morning from my apartment in Kreuzberg, first heading towards Wartenburgerstrasse, then Alexanderplatz, and finally up Berliner Allee. I usually begin these trips around the city, following the footsteps of others with a bit of hesitation. Maybe it's the uncertainty of what I will find or why I am doing it at all. Why should I be interested in somebody else's life? Is it a drive to understand how one marks out one's place in the world? However, it usually happens that I find myself go away and something else takes over. When I let myself go and start living in the presence via somebody else's past. As I cycled north, I became aware that I was leaving my place and entering your domain. You became my guide. I was in your hands. It took me a while to find the gravesite. Actually, first I went to the wrong cemetery, and only after trying in vain to find the statue of Jesus located at the crossroads did I realize that I was at the wrong address and the wrong cemetery. The one I was looking for was just around the corner. I parked my bike again, entered the cemetery, and instantly recognized the Jesus statue. I started to feel a bit odd again, not really knowing what I was doing there. I walked around a bit, checking out all the names on all the gravestones, trying to remember where the grave was in relationship to the statue. Apart from the groundskeeper, I was completely alone, just like you were that day. I got a bit disoriented, no longer trusting my memory from the previous day. I must have walked around the same area 3 or 4 times before I finally saw it. Bernhard Garling, 1908 to 1978. I must have walked by several times without seeing it. Strange. The grave site was as neglected as when you first found it. I tried to imagine when was the last time you visited him. What did you think of when you arrived at the cemetery and realized that his gravesite was so forgotten? Did you also imagine yourself in his place? Did you think about when you would cease to matter? Is this what you were thinking when you made that trek alone to the gravesite and then quickly went looking for the garden shears and rake to clear away all the weeds? Was this on your mind when you went to the florist by the cemetery entrance to buy fresh flowers? Is this why I also decided to go to the same florist at the entrance of the cemetery to try and buy the same type of flowers and place them at your father's grave? By the end of the day, it was starting to get cold with rain imminent. I tried to follow the last steps you made through the cemetery before getting on the bus, heading back to your wife. This was the last thing I did before heading back to my family as well.
Eben hat der Akku gestreikt. Jetzt funktioniert er schon wieder. Dort hinten liegt Vater. Man kann sich dem Reiz dieses Segenskirchhofs kaum entziehen. Will man ja auch gar nicht. Gersteallee. Der Meister selbst. Zweite Lindenallee. Dritte Lindenallee. Und vierte Lindenallee. Oder auch plus 2 über Kreuz. Dem, der am Kreuz für uns gestorben ist, in der Mitte. Jetzt laufe ich zum 4. Mal zum Ausgang. Heute. Wegen der Blumen, wegen des Akkus. Natürlich denken wir auch heute gerade an die relativ nahen Verwandten unseres Vaters, die Schwägerin und den Cousin, die auch heute Geburtstag haben. Und grüßen sie von hier aus ganz herzlich mit besten Wünschen für Gesundheit. Dass sie gemeint sind. Keine Details heute. Besonders nicht, wenn hochgeladen wird auf YouTube, ohne zu fragen. So, jetzt noch Fahrkarte holen für morgen. Letztes Mal in diesem Semester und dann geht es im Oktober wieder weiter. Ich schließe die Stunde, sagte der Studienratschwör von Bernhard Garling. Bis dahin.